Hey guys, I cannot believe that next week is the start of school. This is the last week of summer, and starting Tuesday next week, our kids are going to be back in school and it's going to be just go time. So before we head off into September and into fall, I wanted to share one quick little tutorial with you guys and then give you an update about what I'm working on. Hey guys, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is Taking Back Friday. This is a space where we come every Friday and we talk about knitting and spinning and weaving and dyeing and all sorts of fabulous things about the fiber arts. Now, I generally tend to talk about making time to make things, and I'll give you an update about what I'm making and what I've been working on after the meat of this episode. But in the past couple of weeks, I've been talking about how I was working on my Hitofude cardigan, this one here, and how it required a provisional cast on to begin. And I kind of live with the assumption that people know how to do a provisional cast on because it's such a fantastic cast on technique. It's really, really great. And it's great because it allows you to have live stitches, and those live stitches you can then pick up and then knit on from that end, and just a whole bunch of things that you can do with a provisional cast on. So what I wanted to do was to do a quick little tutorial in here to show you how I do a provisional cast on, and then we'll move on with the update. But I wanted you to have this information because I think a provisional cast on is great. It's very handy for all sorts of different projects, yeah, let's get to it. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what a provisional cast on is and why it's really, really useful. So a provisional cast on is basically a cast on where you make first a crochet chain, and then you pick up stitches from the crochet chain, and then you can knit from that edge, and you knit from that cast on edge, and you do whatever you want. And then after the end of that knitting is done, you take your crochet chain and then you unzip it. So you kind of undo your crochet chain, and as you're undoing it, you are there by releasing those stitches that you knit from that crochet chain, and you're releasing them, and then they become live stitches. So with those live stitches, you can then pick up and then knit in the opposite direction, or you can pick up those stitches and knit a different kind of bind off, or you can do all sorts of things. So one of the uses for a provisional cast on is to do something like cast on for a sweater right here at the chest area. And so you can cast on provisionally in the round, and then you can knit your sweater down, and then you can unzip those provisional casted on stitches, and then you can knit the rest of it up. And so you can basically knit a sweater in two different directions. So you can knit halfway up and halfway down from this provisional cast on. There's all sorts of other things that you can do, like if you cast on lace, like a lace stole with a provisional cast on, then you can start in the middle, the center back of your stole, and knit one lace panel one side down this way with your lace pattern, and then you unpick your provisional cast on, pick up from that center edge, and then knit the other side of your stole. And so what you'll end up with is a mirror image. If you knit your stole from one end all the way to the other end, there's going to be a directionality to it, right? So all your stitches are going to be going in one way, all your patterning is going to be going in one way, and so it produces a unidirectional design. If you want your design to be mirror imaged, you have to either graft your stitches in the middle of your stole, or you sew together two panels, or you do this provisional cast on technique. So enough talking about what the provisional cast on is and what it's for. I'm going to show you how I do it. So here we are, we're ready to do our provisional cast on. For your provisional cast on, you're going to need a crochet hook. You're also going to need some spare scrap yarn. So this is what I'm going to use for the scrap yarn. And then we're going to use our actual yarn that we're going to knit with, and your knitting needles. So I'm going to put these ones off to the side for now, and I'm just going to focus on the crochet chain. So I have my yarn here. What I'm going to do first is I just make myself a little slip knot here. And then I'm going to slip that into my crochet hook. And then I'm just going to create a little bit of a chain with my crochet hook. So it doesn't really matter what size your crochet hook is, doesn't really matter what size your scrap yarn is. For something like the DK weight yarn that I'm going to be using, I'm using this yarn here, which is like a worsted weight yarn, and all I'm really wanting is something that is really smooth. I want the yarn to be smooth, not fuzzy. I want it to be easy to unpick later. So later on, you can see this crochet chain, I can just go like this and undo my crochet chain. So that is kind of the goal. That's what I want at the end of the day. That's what I want to be able to do. So you can see I have my crochet chain here. I've just done probably about 10 stitches, maybe 10 chains. And you can see the chains have a little bit of a V. There's a V shape to them. Now, if you flip that chain over, you will see little bumps. The bumps look almost like purl bumps. And so that is what we're going to be picking up out of. Now, before I go on, I'm just going to do a few more. So you can see there's my chain, you can see the V's quite clearly, and if I flip it over, you can hopefully see these little bumps on the other side. And so that's what we're going to be working with. So I'm going to just extend out this loop a little bit. I'm just going to leave that for now. Okay, so I've just broken my yarn off here. I have my crochet chain, and I'm just going to take this last end, I'm going to slip it through the loop, so that the crochet chain is not going anywhere. Now, looking at the back side of my crochet chain, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my needle, one of my needles, in through the back side of the purl loop. And then with my yarn, this is my actual yarn that I'm going to use, I'm going to basically pick up a stitch from there. And so I have one stitch on my needle, and that's one stitch that's been cast on. And then taking my needle again into this back loop, these little bumps here, into a bump on the back and pulling it through. And I can go all the way across my chain, picking up through the bumps on the back. So I'll show you this a little bit more up close, but you can see this is the side with the V's, and then when I turn it over, there's the side with the bumps. And so this needle tip is going into the back of that bump and then picking up a stitch out of that bump. So you go into the bump, loop the yarn around, pull it through as if you're knitting, basically. And so there we have 10 stitches cast on provisionally. So there's my crochet chain down here. Those are my stitches. So now I can just go on and knit as per usual. I'm going to knit these 10 stitches. Okay, great. So you can see that I have sort of picked up about 10 stitches, knit a few rows of stockinette. And now say you've finished your knitting, you're going to bind off this end, but now you're going to undo the provisional cast on to make those other stitches live. So what you want to do there is you're going to take, this is the end that I know was the one that we broke off. That's the end of my crochet chain. I'm going to undo that last part where I slipped the end of the yarn through the last loop. And so that will make the end of my crochet chain live again, and I'll be able to undo it. So you can see here, I have my crochet chain, and all I need to do is unzip it. And as I'm unzipping it, you can see that there is a stitch that has just become live. So as that stitch is becoming live, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick it up. Now, if I had a double pointed needle, this would be a great time to use that. I'm going to unpick the next one and then pick that one up, undo the next stitch and pick up that stitch. And so I go one at a time so that I don't lose all my stitches, especially if you're doing something like working with lace. You don't want to just zip the crochet chain across and then have all these stitches that you want to try to pick up. So if I unzipped a whole bunch at a time, you can see I've already got myself a dropped stitch just because of the tension of pulling on that. So I'm going to fix that one. Okay, so unzipping one at a time and picking up that stitch. And there we go. So I can just undo the rest of my crochet chain and get rid of that waste yarn. So what I have here is I have a piece of knitting that has live stitches on one end and live stitches on the other end. Now you can transfer these stitches to another needle and continue knitting on either end, or you could fold them and join them if you need to. So there's all sorts of things that you can do with your stitches now that they're live. Okay, so that is basically how I do a provisional cast on. Hopefully it's very useful to you. Hopefully you can use this in upcoming projects. And don't be scared of it. It's really easy to do, and I hope that this is helpful to you. Okay, so now I want to share with you guys a quick update about what I'm actually making. Now, I have been, for maybe the past almost a year, been really focused on the idea of being monogamous about my knitting, just knitting one project at a time. I found that it actually helps me get to the finish line and get things done. Now, last week I talked about how I was so excited to knit all these sweaters, and so I cast on for the beekeeper and the soldatna, and I have this Hitofude sweater at the same time, so I have 3 sweaters going on. And I can show you that the progress that I've made on the beekeeper is almost nothing, because I have been spending all of my time knitting the soldatna. And so it is totally a phenomenon for me that when there's multiple knitting projects going on, I just don't really know which one to knit. And I just end up knitting one and ignoring or abandoning the others. So I think that for myself, it's a great idea to have just one sweater project going on at a time. So yeah, I do still advocate for the idea of having like one sweater project, one sock project, maybe one easy project, something like that. I think that that's nice. But having 3 sweater projects on the go makes it difficult to decide which one to knit, because this one is actually really super fun. So this is the soldatna sweater, the soldatna crop, and this is how far I've gotten so far. It looks really tiny, but I'm thinking and I'm hoping that it's just because of the circular needles that I have them on that I can't really extend it and see what it really looks like. I was looking at this neckline, I was thinking, is this gonna be big enough for my head to go through? But I hope so. But this is basically how far I've gotten on the chart. It's about 1/3 of the way in the chart. I can see how this could go theoretically very quickly. Yeah. It's lovely to knit. I'm really also enjoying how the fabric feels as color work and the way that the colors are working up. It's quite fun. I'm really enjoying it. So last week, after I had my video about choosing colors for the soldatna, I had one of the viewers, Ruth, emailed me directly to let me know some other ideas that she had about picking colors for soldatna. So I'm going to share some of Ruth's ideas with you as well, because they're really, really great ideas about choosing colors, specifically colors for color work and for this project. So she says, since the color used for the collar, hem, and sleeves is the frame for the rest of the sweater, not only should it be a color that looks best next to the wearer's skin, but this color should also be likely the darkest of the 4. So that is basically what I'm doing here. I'm using the darkest color as the frame of my sweater. And then something like 2 warm colors and 2 cool colors is consistently a reliable choice. So this is a great way to incorporate complementary color theory like oranges and browns together. So something like, you know, there's 4 colors being used in a soldatna. And so you want to have some contrast. You want to have some lighter colors and some darker colors. And perhaps you could also work with a complementary contrast. So maybe 2 of the colors could be in the blue zone, and then 2 of the colors could be in the gold orange zone. And that would make for kind of like a complementary match. Or you could do 2 in the sort of the green area and then 2 in the red area. Now I find that if you want to get away from having that red-green combination look too Christmassy, then you could do something like, you know, fuchsia is a version of red, and then mixed with something like lime green is also a version of green, or moss green, or, you know, different intensities, different saturations, all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be exactly, you know, red and green. It can be slightly offset. Again, also purple and gold, that is a nice combination as well. Another one that she's suggesting is doing a 3-color gradient from one color family with a contrasting color. So for one of the combinations that we did one called Pink Pearl, and that is basically what it's like. So there's kind of like 3 colors that graduate together from a darker to a lighter color, and then one accent color. I've also seen this done in a lot of sweaters where there's like a grello kind of colorway where you're using multiple shades of gray and then having a pop or an accent color with a yellow or a gold. That's one of my favorite combinations. And she's saying, number 4, it can also be helpful to create a gradient of values, not necessarily a gradient of colors. So like we talked about, light to dark, dark to light, warm to cool, cool to warm. So different gradients, different ways of mixing and blending colors. This way you kind of don't need to feel like you're grasping at straws, grasping at a whole bunch of different colors. What do I pick? How do I go? So if you give yourself a bit of a framework, looking at, generating contrast from creating a gradient from light to dark with an accent, warm to cool, those kinds of constructs give you a little bit of a framework in which to decide on your color choices. Now, something which I don't know if you guys know, that 2 years ago we started building the School of Sweet Georgia, and the first thing that we started with was a free workshop called Color Play, and Color Play is all about how to choose colors for projects exactly like this. And I can't believe that I didn't reference it earlier, but this is basically something where you can go in, you sign up for the school, you sign up for free, and it goes through a workbook with you of exercises of how to match colors, how to put different colors together, either in sort of like a warm, cool, complementary sort of setup, or maybe you're looking at analogous colors where the colors are close to each other on the color wheel. So lots of different ways of looking at color. And so hopefully some of those ideas that Ruth has shared will be helpful to you if you guys are also thinking about making a soldatna. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing any other ideas that you guys might have about choosing colors and how you guys go about choosing colors. I find that very often I end up in a bit of a color rut because I do the same color combinations over and over and over again. And everything is like a combination of different magentas and purples and lollipop kind of colors. So yeah, it's sometimes helpful to look at things from a different perspective and see what else might be out there in terms of color. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you is something that I'm actually quite excited about. A couple of weeks ago, I shared with you guys that I was spinning the Shacked 50th anniversary colorway that Sweet Georgia dyed on behalf of Shacked. And we dyed this colorway that we designed together with Jane Patrick to represent different aspects of the Shacked business. So there was like a maroon burgundy kind of color. There was a gold, warm gold, brass kind of color, and then there was a navy blue kind of color, all mixed together in a big piece of fiber. Now, they did a spin along in June, and now being the end of August, I have finally finished my braid of fiber. So I finished spinning this, and you can see what this is. You can see this is my skein. So this skein ended up being about worsted weight, and it's about 200 yards or so, a little bit more than 200 yards. This is a 3-ply yarn that I spun, and it basically has a combination of all of the colors in every inch of this yarn. So basically what I did was I took that big long braid and I divided it crosswise into 3 chunks, and then with each one of those sections, I split it in half. So I basically have 6 sections. And then because the coloring is different from the beginning to end of each one of those thirds, I took those 2 halves and I flipped them. So I flipped one so that way they would kind of, like a dark end would match up with a lighter end, and a lighter end would match up with a darker end, something like that. And then each one of those halves I then stripped again into 7 individual strips. And so then I would combine, and I would take like one light to dark strip and one dark to light strip, and I would hold those together at the same time and then draft from those two fiber strips at the same time. So that's kind of combination spinning. So that's what I did for all of these, and each one of those thirds was spun to an individual bobbin. I did the trick which I learned from Rachel at Welford Pearls or Woolen Spinning, where I did rewind every single one of my bobbins onto a storage bobbin, and then I plied from the storage bobbins. So that is the yarn that I've made. It's nice. I like it. And you know, I've been talking about this for a long time about how I'm really enamored with that night shift cowl, scarf, shawl project. And I just have not yet found the right combination of yarns that I want to use for that project. So with this one project, I was thinking, well, what if I took another braid that was slightly more on the maroon side or the burgundy side of things and spun another skein, and then one here that was more on the blue side of things and spun a skein here. And I could use those 3 skeins together as my night shift project. I could theoretically take another one of the shacked braids, break it in half, and then take another half braid of a burgundy color and another half braid of a blue color, and then that could be sort of how they overlap. So part of this coloring would be in another skein, and part of this coloring would be in another skein that would be more blue. So it's kind of taking this colorway and shifting it in 2 different directions and then producing a complementary set like that. So that's kind of what I have in mind. Of course, this is not a project with a deadline or anything like that, so I just do it as I have time. So that's it for today. That's a little bit of a rundown of the things that I've been working on, things that have been recently finished. And yeah, I can't believe it's the end of summer. I would love to hear from you guys if you're excited about fall, what you have planned for September, or if you're feeling like, oh, you still need kind of a few more weeks of summer to relax and rest. I could do with some resting and relaxing too. So thank you guys so much for watching this. I'm really excited about what's coming this fall, and I hope you guys will stay with us. If you guys like this content, please do hit the like button, and if you want to see more content like this, please do hit subscribe. We come here every Friday and we talk about spinning and dyeing and weaving and knitting and making time to make things. So thank you guys so much for being here. If you want to find us on the internet, you can find us at SweetGeorgiaYarns.com. You can also find us on Instagram at SweetGeorgia. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will see you guys in the next one. All right, bye for now.